I was sitting on the couch one evening, scrolling through social media, when I noticed a comment from my wife, Lisa, on a guy's post. At first glance, it seemed harmless, just a playful exchange with an old friend, but something gnawed at me. This guy, Mark, had always been around, a shadow lurking in our life since Lisa's college days. I tried to shake it off, but the nagging feeling wouldn't let go. Our marriage had been going downhill, and I could feel the weight of it pressing down on me. Lisa had been more distant lately, spending late hours at work and going out with her friends more often, claiming she needed a break from the daily grind. I wanted to support her, to be the understanding husband, but deep down I sensed there was more to it. I had been trying to man up, as she put it, to be the rock she needed, but her words stung more than I cared to admit. Each time she'd turn her back on me, it felt like a betrayal. I often found myself staring at the wall, questioning where we had gone wrong, where the laughter ended. Intimacy had slipped away, and now this comment was the last straw. The following days were a blur of unease. I paid more attention to her phone, her late nights, and the way she would smile when she received a text. The anxiety gnawed at me like a relentless parasite. I wasn't about to let my fears fester in silence. One evening, after she had left for what she claimed was a girls' night, I made the decision to dig deeper. I don't even know what I was looking for, but it didn't take long for me to find it. I pulled out her phone, the device she so often clutched like a lifeline. It took some serious nerve to go through her stuff, but I needed to know. The password was easy. She had always used our anniversary, a date that now felt like a cruel joke. I found the text thread with Mark. The banter was light at first, but as I scrolled back, things turned steamy. There were flirty emojis and, shockingly, images I'd never seen before, the kind of stuff you don't share with just any friend. My heart raced. I felt sick. This was beyond a simple friendship, and I knew it. As I sat there, the weight of betrayal crashing down on me, I began to imagine the worst. Was she with him now? Had she lied about where she was? The rage bubbled up inside me. I confronted her the moment she walked through the door, her carefree demeanor instantly shifting to confusion. "Lisa, we need to talk," I said, my voice steady, though my insides were churning. "What's wrong?" she asked, feigning innocence, but I could see through her act. I laid it all out. The messages, the pictures, the late nights, everything I had uncovered. Her face went pale, and for a moment I thought I could see the facade cracking. But then she shifted into damage control mode. "It's not what it looks like. You're just being paranoid," she shot back, crossing her arms defensively, her back against the wall she had built around herself. I couldn't believe it. The lies came pouring out, excuses and justifications like a dam bursting. "Mark means nothing to me," she claimed, but it was clear that he meant everything at that moment. In that moment, the anger boiled over, but it was more than that. I felt a deep sadness wash over me, an emptiness I couldn't begin to comprehend. The woman I had loved was standing right in front of me, but she was a stranger. What followed was a chaotic exchange, where trust was shattered and the foundation of our relationship crumbled. I went from shock to disbelief, and finally to a simmering rage. It hurt to see her so unrepentant, so willing to deny what was clear as day. As the confrontation unfolded, I felt a part of me dying inside, the part that believed she loved me. Part of me wanted to scream, to throw things, to make her feel the pain I was feeling. But I knew that wouldn't solve anything. Instead, I took a deep breath, fought to keep my voice steady, and told her that I needed time to think. And so began the emotional roller coaster of accepting betrayal, a journey I never wanted to take. After that confrontation, I was in a daze. I felt like a ghost drifting through our house, which now felt more like a prison. Lisa was still there, but the warmth that used to fill our home had vanished, replaced by a suffocating tension that wrapped around me like a thick fog. I spent the first few days in a haze, replaying every moment in my head, trying to make sense of the betrayal. I couldn't sleep, haunted by visions of Lisa and Mark together, laughing, sharing secrets, moments I thought were ours. The bed felt cold and empty, and I found myself moving to the couch, hopping to find some comfort in the familiar darkness of the living room. I would lie there, staring at the ceiling, wondering if I could ever trust her again. Every day felt like it dragged on forever. I watched Lisa go about her routine, still trying to act as if nothing had changed, the same hollow smile plastered on her face. I couldn't stand the sight of her. It made my blood boil. Sometimes I caught her looking at me with a hint of guilt in her eyes, but she quickly masked it with indifference. I started to notice little things, the way she would flinch if I moved too suddenly, or how she often had her phone clutched tightly in her hand, like a lifeline. Was she worried I'd find more? I felt a mix of anger and pity for her. She was living in a web of her own deception. I had a choice to make. I could either confront the situation head-on or let myself fall deeper into despair. I knew that if I stayed silent, I would only become more resentful, and the cycle of pain would continue. I decided I would take back my power, but I didn't know what that would look like yet. In the days following our argument, I reached out to a few close friends, sharing just enough of the story to gain their perspectives. They were shocked, and their reactions ranged from sympathy to outright anger on my behalf. As much as I appreciated their support, I still felt alone in this mess. At one point, Jake, a close friend from college, suggested I confront Mark directly, but I wasn't sure if I wanted to stoop to that level. Instead, I began to find solace in my own hobbies, things I had neglected over the years. I immersed myself in my work, focusing on projects I had put on the back burner. I found an odd sense of satisfaction in pouring my energy into my career, pouring myself into something that felt productive. It was liberating to reclaim some part of my identity outside of the tumultuous relationship I found myself in. But despite my attempts to distract myself, the emotional turmoil bubbled beneath the surface. I felt a mix of betrayal, anger, and profound sadness. I missed the closeness we once had. I missed the laughter, the easy conversations, and the intimacy that had defined our relationship. Now those memories felt tainted, as if they had been painted over with a thick layer of resentment. One evening, after several nights of restless sleep, I found myself at a bar, nursing a drink, staring into the glass, contemplating my next move. It was a small dive bar where the low lights and soft music provided a momentary escape from my reality. As I sat there, a familiar face approached me. It was Sarah, an old friend from high school. We exchanged awkward pleasantries, and soon her probing questions led me to open up about what was going on. "Let me get this straight," she said, incredulous. "She's cheating on you and still expects you to be the understanding husband. That's just messed up." Her words struck a chord, and suddenly I felt validated. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't imagining things. The hurt I felt was legitimate. I realized then that I needed to set boundaries. I didn't want to be the passive victim in this scenario. I was going to take control, and that meant shutting down her social life, as she had so casually suggested I do when I expressed my insecurities. As the days turned into weeks, I began to map out my plan. I started with subtle changes. I made it clear that I wasn't going to be the one waiting around for her to come back to me. If she wanted to continue seeing Mark, she could do so without me in the picture. I deleted all the social media apps from my phone and focused on my work and my own social life. And then I took it a step further. I quietly distanced myself from her friends, muting them on social media, not responding to their texts. I decided that if Lisa wanted to lead a double life, she could do so without my support. I needed to make a statement, and I wanted her to feel the consequences of her actions. I could tell Lisa was confused by my sudden change in demeanor. I wasn't the understanding husband anymore. I had grown distant, unapproachable. Perhaps she expected me to beg for her attention or plead for forgiveness, but I had decided I would not be the fool anymore. Every time she'd ask if I wanted to do something together, I'd politely decline, making excuses about work or needing to catch up on personal projects. Each rejection felt liberating, a fire igniting within me. I could see the frustration mounting in her. She was losing control, and I was starting to enjoy this newfound power. But it was also a double-edged sword. I was torn between my desire for revenge and the pain of what we had once shared. I knew this was a dangerous game. It could either end in newfound freedom or total destruction. The emotional impact of my decisions weighed heavily on me, but there was no turning back now. I had started this journey for myself, and I wasn't about to be dragged down by her choices any longer. Little did I know, however, that the true test was just around the corner. Weeks turned into a month, and the tension in the house was palpable. I could feel Lisa's frustration simmering just beneath the surface, and I had to admit, it was a thrill to watch her gradually lose her grip on the situation. I had become more self-assured and resolute, almost giddy at the thought of regaining control of my own life. But with that came an underlying unease. I was playing a dangerous game, and I knew it. One evening, as I prepared dinner, I heard the front door creak open. I glanced up to see Lisa trudging in, her face a mixture of irritation and exhaustion. She looked like she had just stepped out from under a rain cloud. I continued stirring the pasta, maintaining my distance, and noticed her trying to catch my gaze. "Hey," she said, her voice lacking its usual enthusiasm. "I'm home early." "Great," I replied, keeping my tone neutral. I didn't want to give her ammunition. I didn't want her to feel like she had any power over me. "Dinner's almost ready." We sat down to eat in silence, the clinking of forks the only sound filling the heavy air. I watched her pick at her food, clearly distracted. I could sense her frustration boiling over, and I was curious to see how she would address it this time. "Why have you been so distant?" she finally asked, her voice taking on an edge. "I thought we were working on things." "Working on things," I echoed, feigning ignorance. "You mean your things with Mark? I've been busy trying to sort out my life without you dragging me into your chaos." Lisa's eyes widened, and I could see the shifting emotions playing across her face. "What chaos? You're the one who's acting like a stranger." I leaned back in my chair and crossed my arms. "No, Lisa, I'm the one who's not putting up with your lies anymore. You're the one who decided to step out of our marriage." "I told you it was a mistake," she exclaimed, her voice rising. "I thought we could move past it." "Move past what exactly?" I shot back, my own irritation flaring. "You don't get to cheat on me and then expect everything to magically go back to the way it was. You wanted me to man up, and that's exactly what I'm doing. I'm not going to play your games anymore." From that moment on, the floodgates opened. Lisa launched into a tirade about how I had changed, how I used to be more understanding. She painted herself as the victim, claiming she was just looking for a bit of excitement, something I had supposedly taken away from her. I couldn't believe my ears. I'd spent years supporting her ambitions, her friends, and her interests while completely disregarding my own feelings. It was clear I had struck a nerve, and the air was thick with tension as she continued to rant. "You're being unreasonable. You're pushing me away. Do you think I wanted to hurt you? I just needed some excitement in my life." "Excitement?" I spat. "You don't get to disguise cheating as excitement. You were just looking for a thrill without considering the consequences." Her face flushed with anger, and I watched as she struggled to maintain her composure. "I can't believe you're still holding this against me. You've made your point. Can't we just move on?" "Move on?" I repeated incredulously. "How can I move on when you're still playing the victim? You're the one who put us in this mess." We were both shouting at this point, and it felt strangely liberating to finally confront her. Yet I was also acutely aware that our relationship hung by a thread. In that moment, I finally admitted to myself that I didn't want to live in this emotional prison any longer. I needed to find a way forward, and I wasn't sure if that included Lisa. After that heated exchange, I decided to take a step back. I needed clarity. That night I lay in bed staring at the ceiling again, contemplating the future. The thought of separating from Lisa frightened me. We had built a life together and had shared dreams, but those dreams felt shattered and hollow now. The truth was, I still loved her, but love alone wasn't enough to fix the damage. I began to picture my life without her, and it was both terrifying and intoxicating. What would I do? Where would I go? I had friends, a career, and chances to explore new paths. I could finally focus on myself, something I hadn't done in years. The next day, I made a decision. After consulting with a lawyer, I learned about the process of separation and what it would mean. I didn't have to rush into anything. I could take my time, and I could be strategic about how I approached this. I felt a sense of empowerment, a renewed sense of control over my own life. That evening, as I returned home, I was ready to have another conversation with Lisa. I knew it would be difficult, but I needed her to understand the depth of my feelings and that I was serious about considering a separation. I had to put everything on the table, my emotions, my expectations, and the consequences of her actions. As I walked through the door, I could see her sitting on the couch, scrolling through her phone. I took a deep breath, steeling myself for what was to come. It was time to confront the truth and the reality of what our relationship had become. I could no longer ignore the damage that had been done. "Lisa," I said, my voice steady but firm, "we need to talk." The weight of those words hung in the air, and I knew that the outcome would change everything. "Lisa," I said, my voice steady but firm, "we need to talk." She looked up from her phone, surprise flickering across her face before it morphed into a defensive posture. "About what? More accusations, more blame?" "No," I replied, shaking my head. "This is about us, our marriage. I can't keep going like this, and I don't think you can either." She frowned, crossing her arms. "So what are you saying? You want to give up?" "No, I'm saying we need to be honest with each other. We can't keep pretending everything is fine when it's clearly falling apart." I gathered my thoughts, trying to articulate the whirlwind of emotions I had experienced over the past few weeks. "I've been thinking about what happened," I continued, "and how you decided to betray my trust. I can't just forget that. It's not something we can sweep under the rug. I need you to understand the impact of your actions." Lisa opened her mouth to protest, but I held up a hand. "No, listen, I know we're both hurting, but we have to face the truth. I've realized that I can't stay in a relationship where I feel like an option instead of a priority. It's painful to admit, but I think we may need to consider separation." Her face paled, and for a moment I thought she might cry. "You're really serious?" "Yes," I said, feeling a weight settle in my chest. "I'm serious. I've consulted with a lawyer, and I'm figuring out what separation would look like. It doesn't mean we have to make a permanent decision right now, but I can't keep doing this, living in a state of limbo while you try to find yourself or whatever it is you're doing." She shook her head, disbelief etched across her features. "You can't just throw away our marriage like this. We can fix it." "You mean you can fix it?" I countered, my frustration peeking through. "You've been the one keeping secrets and lying. I can't fix this alone. I won't." The silence that followed was deafening. Lisa's breath quickened as she processed my words, and I felt a strange mix of sadness and relief wash over me. This was the moment I had prepared for, and yet it felt surreal. "Please," she said, her voice trembling. "Let's go to therapy. I can do better. I'll do better. Just give me a chance." I looked at her, searching for any glimpse of sincerity, but all I saw was desperation. Was this real remorse, or was she just trying to cling to the life she had built? The truth was, I didn't know. "Therapy might help, Lisa, but it won't erase what you've done," I replied cautiously. "I need time to evaluate how I really feel. I can't pretend things are okay anymore." "So what, you just want to walk away?" she pressed, her voice thick with emotion. "You'll just let the best years of our lives go to waste?" "It's not that simple," I said, frustration creeping into my tone. "You've made choices that led us here. I can't ignore them. I want to be happy again. Whether that's with you or without you, I don't know yet." Her expression shifted from anger to sorrow, and she finally dropped her arms, letting them rest in her lap. "What if I promise to end things with Mark? I'll do whatever it takes to prove I'm committed to this marriage." I took a deep breath, trying to process her words. I wanted to believe her, but the thought of jumping back into the same cycle of manipulation and deceit made my stomach churn. "If you truly want to end it, then do it, but I need to see action, not just words. Trust is earned, and you've broken mine." "I'll talk to him," she said, her voice shaking slightly. "I'll tell him it's over. I'll do whatever it takes." I nodded, feeling an odd mix of anger and compassion. "You have to understand that saying the right things isn't enough anymore. Actions speak louder than words, and I need to see you take real steps to fix this." As the conversation progressed, I could see the weight of my words settle on her shoulders. She was clearly shaken, but there was also a flicker of determination in her eyes. I knew this was a defining moment for both of us, and how we moved forward would shape the rest of our lives. Over the next few days, I watched her navigate the aftermath of our conversation. At first, she was more attentive, trying to engage in conversations and share her thoughts about what had happened. But I couldn't shake the feeling that she was still holding back, as if she was testing the waters rather than fully embracing the situation. One evening, while I was working on some projects, Lisa approached me, sitting down beside me on the couch. "I reached out to Mark," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I told him I couldn't see him anymore. I really meant it." I looked up from my work, searching her face for sincerity. "And what did he say?" "He was upset," she admitted, glancing away. "But I told him I was committed to our marriage and needed to focus on us." "Okay," I said cautiously, still skeptical. "But you have to understand that just cutting things off isn't enough. Trust takes time to rebuild." "I know," she replied, her eyes pleading. "I'm willing to work through it. I want to prove to you that I can be the wife you deserve." I wanted to believe her, but doubt lingered. I had heard these promises before. "It's a start," I said carefully. "But let's not rush into anything. I need to see you taking these steps consistently." As the days passed, I found myself oscillating between hope and skepticism. I wanted to believe that Lisa could change, but every time I saw her phone light up with a message or caught her lost in thought, doubt crept back in. I began to realize that while I had my own healing to do, Lisa had her own journey ahead of her. It wouldn't be easy, and the road to recovery would be long and fraught with challenges, but whether we would navigate it together remained uncertain. I kept my focus on my own personal growth, diving into my work and reconnecting with friends. I needed my own support system, people who could lift me up as I navigated this tumultuous phase. I found solace in the small joys of life: workouts, hobbies, and spending time with friends. Through it all, I tried to remain open to the possibility of reconciliation with Lisa, but I also knew I wouldn't be a doormat. I had to put myself first for change, and if that meant stepping away completely, I was starting to accept that as a valid choice. The uncertainty of our future weighed heavily on me, and I realized this was only the beginning of a long journey toward healing. The question remained: could we overcome the betrayal, or was this the beginning of the end? Only time would tell. Weeks turned into a blur, and the emotional roller coaster we were on showed no signs of slowing down. Lisa had tried to put on her best face, making an effort to re-engage and reconnect with me, but I felt a nagging doubt lingering in the back of my mind. I kept asking myself whether these were genuine attempts to mend our relationship or just a facade to keep me from walking away. One evening, as I returned home from work, I noticed the house was unusually quiet. I called out for Lisa, but there was no answer. I shrugged it off, thinking she might be in the shower or just lost in a book. I dropped my bag by the door and headed to the kitchen to grab a drink. As I opened the fridge, I noticed a small piece of paper on the counter. It was a note hastily scrawled in Lisa's handwriting. "Went out with friends, don't wait up, love you." A sinking feeling settled in my stomach. She had been going out more frequently, claiming it was to reconnect with old friends, but something about this felt off. I tried to brush it aside, telling myself I was being paranoid, but the doubt was gnawing at me. I couldn't shake the feeling that she was still hiding things. As the night wore on, I found it increasingly difficult to focus. I turned on the TV, but the sounds were just background noise. My mind was racing. Was she with Mark again? Had she slipped back into old habits? The questions spiraled out of control, and I couldn't allow myself to think straight. By the time she returned home, I was a bundle of nerves. I heard the front door open and rushed to the living room, trying to appear calm. Lisa walked in, her cheeks flushed and her laughter echoing through the room. "Hey, I didn't expect you to still be up," she exclaimed, dropping her purse on the couch. "Yeah, well, I wanted to talk to you," I said, my voice wavering slightly. "About what?" she asked, her demeanor suddenly shifting. "About your night out," I replied, keeping my tone neutral. "You didn't mention where you were going." "Oh, it was just a casual get-together with some girlfriends," she said, waving her hand dismissively. "Nothing you need to worry about." "Nothing I need to worry about," I echoed, my frustration bubbling to the surface. "You go out without telling me, and I'm supposed to take that at face value. You know I'm trying to trust you again, but this isn't helping." Lisa rolled her eyes, and I could see her annoyance rising. "You're still so stuck on this. I told you I'm done with Mark. Can't we just move forward?" "No, we can't just move forward when you keep creating these opportunities for doubt," I shot back. "You're still not being transparent, and it feels like you're trying to keep me in the dark." She took a deep breath, frustration etched on her face. I'm trying. What do you want from me? I want honesty. I want to feel like I'm part of your life, not just the guy you come home to when it suits you, I replied, my voice cracking. You're making this so much harder than it needs to be, she exclaimed, her voice rising. I thought we were working on rebuilding trust. We're trying, but trust is a two-way street, I said, stepping closer to her. You need to recognize that your actions have consequences. If you're serious about moving on, prove it. The tension in the room was electric, and I could see the battle waging in her mind. She looked at me, searching for something, perhaps an inkling of understanding or hope, but deep down I knew we were still standing at a crossroads and the path ahead was uncertain. Fine, she finally said, her tone cooler. I'll make more of an effort to keep you in the loop, but you have to trust me too. I'm trying, Lisa, but it's hard when you keep slipping back into old patterns. I need to see you make real changes, I replied, trying to temper my frustration with a semblance of understanding. Can we just start fresh? She asked, her voice softer. I want to make this work. I sighed, acutely aware that this was a pivotal moment. Starting fresh is going to take time, Lisa. It's not just about the words, it's about actions. You have to show me you mean it. In the days that followed, I tried to remain vigilant while also allowing some space for healing. Lisa made an effort to check in more frequently, texting me during the day, calling to see how I was doing. But every time her phone buzzed near me, a familiar unease would rise within me. One afternoon, I decided to do something I hadn't done in ages. I went for a walk in the park near our home. The sun was shining brightly, the birds were singing, and for a moment I could almost forget the chaos that had unfolded. I took a deep breath, trying to find a sense of peace within myself. As I ambled through the park, I saw couples enjoying the day, families playing in the grass, and friends catching up over coffee. It was a stark contrast to my own life, where things felt heavy and fraught with uncertainty. I couldn't help but wonder if I could ever find that happiness again, whether in this relationship or on my own. After a while, I returned home, my mind clearer and my resolve stronger. I wanted to regain control over my life, regardless of what Lisa decided to do. I realized I had to focus on my own happiness first before I could even think about rebuilding our relationship. That evening, I sat down with a glass of wine and began to pen some thoughts in a journal, something I hadn't done in years. I poured my feelings onto the page, exploring my emotions about the situation and the aftermath of betrayal. Writing became a cathartic release for me, a way to unpack the chaos swirling in my mind. As I wrote, I began to realize that while I loved Lisa, I couldn't allow her actions to define my happiness. I had to make choices for myself, and if that meant considering a future without her, then so be it. But I also knew that I wanted to give us a fair shot at healing. I wanted to explore the possibility of reconciliation without losing myself in the process. That night, I decided to confront Lisa again. I was done with uncertainty and half measures. It was time to lay everything out on the table. I needed to gauge our future together, and if she couldn't meet me halfway, then I would have to make some tough decisions. Lisa, I said as I found her in the living room later that evening, I need to talk to you about our future. The gravity of my words hung in the air, and I could see the concern spread across her face. It was time to make clear the stakes of our relationship and the choices we both had to make moving forward. Lisa, I said as I found her in the living room later that evening, I need to talk to you about our future. The seriousness in my tone immediately seized her attention. She straightened her posture, her eyes widening slightly as she turned to face me fully. What about our future? She asked, her voice steady but laced with tension. I took a deep breath, gathering my thoughts. I've been thinking a lot about us, and I want to be clear about where I stand. I need to know if you're truly committed to making this work or if we're just going through the motions. Lisa bit her lip, her gaze shifting away from mine. I am committed. I've told you that. I'm trying to prove it to you every day. But trying isn't enough anymore, Lisa, I replied, my voice firm. I need to see consistent actions. I can't keep holding on to hope if I don't feel secure in this relationship. She nodded slowly, her expression earnest. I understand, but it's hard for me too. I don't want to push you away. I want to reconnect, but I feel like you're always waiting for me to screw up again. I need you to understand that trust takes time to rebuild. I can't just forget what happened overnight. I want to give us a chance, but it hinges on your willingness to be transparent with me. Okay, she said, her voice gaining strength. Let be transparent. I'll do whatever it takes. We can set boundaries and I'll share everything. I appreciated her willingness to open up, but I needed more than just words. If you're truly committed to this, let's consider counseling together. It could help us work through the pain and rebuild what we've lost. Lisa looked thoughtful, nodding slowly. I think that's a good idea. I've been hesitant, but if it helps us, then I'm all in. As we talked, I felt a surge of hope mixed with caution. The path ahead was still uncertain, but this conversation felt like a step in the right direction. I wanted to believe that we could emerge from this stronger, but I also knew that trust couldn't be forced. It had to be earned over time. I'm glad to hear that, I said, feeling a flicker of optimism. But it's also important that we both commit to this process. We'll have to hold ourselves accountable. Absolutely, she replied, her voice steady. I'm ready to put in the work if you are. In that moment, I realized that while the road to recovery wouldn't be easy, I was willing to take that journey if it meant saving our marriage. I still had doubts, but I was ready to confront them head on. We had a long way to go, but we could at least start moving forward together. As weeks turned into months, we began our counseling sessions. At first, it was uncomfortable as we peeled back layers of pain and resentment. We confronted issues that had been lingering beneath the surface: communication problems, unmet needs, and the strain of neglect. Lisa worked hard to demonstrate her commitment. She began sharing her feelings honestly and openly, and while it was difficult, I appreciated her efforts to be more transparent. We started rebuilding our emotional connection through shared activities, date nights, and open conversations. It was as if we were learning to fall in love all over again, but this time with a deeper understanding of each other's vulnerabilities. But the journey wasn't without its challenges. There were days when the past would rear its head, and feelings of insecurity would plague me. I found myself grappling with the scars of betrayal, questioning whether we could truly recover. During one particularly tough session, I opened up about my fears. Sometimes, I feel like I'm just waiting for the other shoe to drop. I want to trust you, but it's hard to forget what you did. I can't blame you for feeling that way, Lisa said softly. I know I hurt you deeply and it's going to take time, but I promise I'm dedicated to being better for you and for us. Her sincerity shone through, and I realized that healing was a gradual process for both of us. We had to learn to navigate our new normal while acknowledging the pain that had come before. Slowly but surely, the pieces began to click together. I found comfort in our sessions, and we both started to feel more at ease with one another. I began to appreciate the little moments, the laughter we shared, the deep conversations, and the warmth of her hand in mine. Eventually, we reached a turning point where it felt like we had crossed a threshold. Trust wasn't fully restored, but it was on the mend. I could see the changes in Lisa. She was more present, more attuned to my needs, and most importantly, she was learning to communicate without fear. The experience taught me a lot about myself. I learned that vulnerability can be a strength, and confronting my pain is a necessary step toward healing. I discovered the importance of setting boundaries and advocating for my own needs. I also realized how essential it is to take time for self-reflection, even in the midst of chaos. As we continued to work through our issues together, I found a renewed sense of hope. We were both committed to forging a new path, one that would allow us to rebuild our lives side by side. While I couldn't predict the future, I knew one thing for certain: we were both willing to fight for what we had. And for the first time in a long while, I felt a flicker of belief that maybe, just maybe, we could emerge from this stronger than before. In the end, I learned that love is not just about perfection. It's about resilience, growth, and the willingness to confront even the darkest corners of our hearts. No matter what challenges lay ahead, I was ready to face them together.